Welcome back to another film review by me, your host, Theo Ash. Today's film review is not about a player or a group of players. It's about a team. It's about a coach. It's about Kevin O'Connell's Minnesota Vikings. I think that the Vikings can make a lot of noise in this NFC. I think this offense is going to be pretty dynamic, and I want to talk about kind of the history of Kevin O'Connell and what we saw week one. That's the same as Sean McVay's offense, that's different than Sean McVay's offense, and how I think that all of these pieces on the Vikings offense are gonna marry together, and how dynamic I think they can be. So I'm gonna talk a little bit first about Kevin O'Connell's coaching history and all the stops along the way, because he didn't just appear as Sean McVay's assistant one day. There was a lot of steps before that. So before I get into the film, I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. Kevin O'Connell is from the McVay coaching tree, but he wasn't part of that 2015 Washington staff. He didn't just follow McVay or Shanahan around for 7 years until he got a head coaching job. His background is a lot more varied than that, and he's had a lot more influences. He was drafted by the Patriots and learned under Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels. He then bounced around the league and ended up spending a lot of time with Brian Schottenheimer during his stints with the Jets. John DeFilippo was the offensive coordinator when he got his first coaching job. He spent a year as an assistant on the 49ers. That staff had Chip Kelly and Ryan Day on it. The McVay connection starts when he got hired to replace Matt Cavanaugh as the Washington quarterback coach in 2017. McVay was the offensive coordinator the year prior, and Cavanaugh was his quarterback coach. Cavanaugh got promoted to offensive coordinator, so although O'Connell and McVay both were assistants under Jay Gruden, they never worked together in Washington. But O'Connell definitely entered a system with a lot of McVay fingerprints. It is definitely worth noting that one of the quarterbacks that O'Connell coached in Washington was none other than Kirk Cousins. And remember that detail because it comes back later. After Cousins left and his replacement Alex Smith almost died, the offense was mediocre and Cavanaugh got demoted to an assistant role, and O'Connell was promoted to offensive coordinator. Now that offense, the first year O'Connell was offensive coordinator, was horrible, but the big three of Case Keenum, 34-year-old Adrian Peterson, and rookie Terry McLaurin, that wasn't much to work with. The 2019 Rams and 2019 Washington had very similar styles, which makes sense considering all the in-house promotions that Washington had made since McVay left. And I guess the young O'Connell intrigued McVay enough to hire him as the Rams offensive coordinator, where he of course spent the last 2 years and ended up winning the Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford. Now O'Connell is in Minnesota. He's back with Cousins. So what is this going to look like? Well, first of all, I expect the marriage of Kirk Cousins and Kevin O'Connell to work very well. First of all, O'Connell has worked with Kirk Cousins and all of his former coaches before in Washington. O'Connell has also worked with John DeFilippo, who was a former Vikings offensive coordinator. So he has a lot of knowledge and insight into what Kirk Cousins has run before. So I expect very productive conversations between the two of them about what Kirk Cousins likes, what he doesn't like, and the most efficient, effective way to get the most out of him. So this is a film review, and I haven't watched any film yet. What did the Vikings actually look like on Sunday? Let's find out. To me, they looked like the 2020 Rams with Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, and Jared Goff. 30% of their looks were under center. 39% of their dropbacks had play action attached to it. Very Goffy, very 2020 Goff, Ramsey type of looks. And Cousins has run stuff like this before, and I think it's what he's most comfortable with, being like a supercharged Jared Goff, a supercharged Jimmy Garoppolo. And on this play, this is a long touchdown to Justin Jefferson, one of the many times he was wide open. And some of this is good play calling, and a lot of it is just confusion by the Packers defense. Like, this is supposed to be cover three, it looks like, with a deep third for Stokes, a deep third for Jair, and a deep third to, I think that is Amos, the safety. And when Stokes decides to take KJ Osborne here instead of passing him off to the safety, that opens up a big hole at this sideline. And what needs to happen is there needs to be a pass off of Justin Jefferson on the deep over between Jair Alexander and Rasul Douglas. Now, Rasul Douglas is running with Adam Thielen like it's man. I do not think that this is man coverage. I think that he needs to break this off, find Jefferson, and then just kind of drop into that zone and take that area of the field away for the most part. But that doesn't happen. It's a blown coverage. So, good play call, obviously, it's scored, but a lot of it is just confusion by the Packers. However, O'Connell does a lot to kind of manufacture that confusion. And that wrinkle is the use of motion. All of a sudden, for Amos and Stokes, their assignments change right at the snap of the football. Justin Jefferson's over here. It's trips now. Who has who? They don't know. They both take Thielen again. Justin Jefferson is wide open, and it's a touchdown. I don't know why the previous regime didn't use motion. I don't know why anyone wouldn't at this point. I think it's been proven to be pretty effective, but it's something that the McVay tree spams, and it's been effective for literally all of them. Well, all of them except Zach Taylor, but that's a story for another time, I suppose. Justin Jefferson was off to the best start of a wide receiver's career in the history of football before the Vikings started manufacturing him easy looks, putting him in these stacks to guarantee him free releases off the line of scrimmage. Now that they're doing that, I mean, you saw week 1 the effect that can have, and if he broke the yardage record this year, now that the season is 17 games, it really wouldn't surprise me. And that's just the easy manufactured stuff. He can still absolutely torch man coverage like he did here. Some people thought they might line him up in the slot a lot like they did for Kupp, and that didn't really happen, but it didn't matter. They still had plenty of strategies to get the guy open, and even when they didn't have any strategies, he could just win by himself because he's Justin Jefferson. Anyway, enough about Justin Jefferson. I want to go back to talking about play action a little bit because I think they're going to run it a lot this year. Now, one thing about play action and downside to it is it takes a long time to develop. And if you have a bad offensive line or a quarterback with no pocket presence, like Jared Goff, that can be a little bit of a problem because your pressure rate's going to be higher, and sometimes you get moments like this. And I think that Kirk Cousins' pocket poise, his pocket movement, has improved over the past couple of years. I think it's better than it was a couple of years ago, the last time we saw him in this uber play action heavy offense with Stefanski. It's better than it was a few years ago, and it's certainly better than it was with Goff. Like on this play, someone screws something up. They play action the wrong way. He feels pressure in the pocket. He steps up and delivers a really nice anticipatory dime to Justin Jefferson down the field. I'm not sure if we would have seen that from Kirk a couple seasons ago. And when you consider all these factors, I think it's safe to assume that Kirk Cousins could lead a better offense than the one he led a couple years ago when Stefanski was the offensive coordinator, which is scary to think about because they were a top 10 offense by DVOA that year. And following that same logic, I think that the Kevin O'Connell Vikings could be better than the McVay and O'Connell Rams of at least 2020 with Goff. And again, they were a top 10 offense. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that they're top 10 this year. Right now, they're sitting with the number 2 ranked offense by DVOA right now, and I won't be surprised if that number holds more or less throughout the season, because I think the Packers have a pretty good defense. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about how he differs from Sean McVay, because I went on that whole long-winded rant at the beginning about all of his stops and all the people he's learned from, and he's not just a McVay, Shanahan tree guy. And the one thing that I noticed that kind of differed the most from what you see from the Rams is they go in heavier personnel. They go in heavier sets. We got 2 tight ends on the field. We got a fullback. All right. That's 22 personnel. The Rams, week 1 against the Bills, they were in 11 personnel 100% of the time. They had 3 wide receivers out there 100% of the time. And you still see a decent amount of that with O'Connell, but it's not quite as much. There's going to be a little bit more of an element of power to his running game than what McVay does because they've got personnel like CJ Ham. And this running game with Dalvin Cook and a little bit more variety, it wouldn't surprise me if the Vikings running game outpaced the Rams because not only is there going to be more variety, they've also got a Dalvin Cook back there who is a footwork god and still one of the top running backs in the league. O'Connell called power or counter runs 5 times in this game, and that might not seem like a lot, but it is when you consider the Rams have only hit that mark 4 times since 2020. And McVay didn't call counter or power at all during week 1 against the Bills. So it's definitely something O'Connell likes to do way more than McVay, and I think it's a good strategy as the league's boxes start getting lighter as everyone shifts to too high. Speaking of too high defenses, the Vikings are subscribing to that mindset now, and if anything is going to screw them over this year, it's probably going to be that secondary. Patrick Peterson is old and slow. Harrison Smith is getting a little old and slow. Cam Dantzler, the starter on the other side of Patrick Peterson, he's not old, but he's still slow. Christian Watson honestly got behind this defense a couple times, but after that opening play drop, Rodgers wasn't looking at him, man. However, with that being said, corners are de-emphasized in value in these too high structures, and that front 7 with Za'Darius Smith and Danielle Hunter, I mean, it looks pretty beastly. Those 2 looked great. Check out this move by Hunter in this game. He's going to hit the fake rip and then hit a spin move and leave this tackle in the dust and register some pressure. Like, if he can stay healthy finally, he is a top tier edge rusher, and so is Za'Darius, honestly. So the defense still has a chance to be all right. And even if the secondary is a big weakness, what team in the NFC right now doesn't have a unit that's a big weakness right now? I mean, the Buccaneers, maybe they're the favorite to come out of this conference. They lost 3 good starters on that offensive line, and they just lost Donovan Smith too, so that's 4. All right? They're beatable. The 49ers, very beatable. The Rams, very beatable. The Packers, the Vikings just beat them. You know? There's the Eagles. They're probably the best team on paper, but Detroit just dropped like 30-something points on their head, and I still don't totally trust Jalen Hurts. There's the Saints, but they couldn't get much of a pass rush against the Atlanta Falcons offensive line. It took a huge comeback to beat them week 1. They still got Jameis Winston as their quarterback, which I'm not totally sold on yet. And yeah, it's just a wide open conference. Why not the Vikings? You know, why not the Vikings? If everybody can stay healthy, even if there are some problems in the secondary, even if there are some problems on the offensive line, even if Kirk Cousins isn't top tier. By the way, I did have some nits to pick about Kirk Cousins' performance week 1. Like on this play, hits play action, checks the front side of the play. You've got this running back releasing into the flat. That's going to draw this linebacker up. You've got Eric Stokes with his butt pointed towards Justin Jefferson. He's pointed upfield here. Justin Jefferson is running a comeback. I think there's a place to place that ball. If you can get it over that flat defender, I think that is a very throwable ball here, and Kirk is looking right at it. He thinks about it. Watch him double clutch it. Think about it. Oh, double clutch. Oh, I'm too scared. I'm just going to take my check down, when I think there was a pretty open big play waiting for him. And in 19 attempts without play action, Kirk Cousins' average throw only traveled 4.2 yards down the field. That was the lowest in the league, behind names like Tua Tagovailoa, Joe Flacco, and Matt Ryan. So some of that conservative nature definitely popped up week 1 for Cousins, and a lot of his throws to Jefferson were kind of wide open. But overall, this is not a Kirk Cousins hate session. He played quite well, in my opinion, but still not like some Viking fans will say, oh my God, he's top 5. Still, this performance didn't move me that much. Are they better than the best team in the AFC, whether that be the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Bills? Probably not, but they can make it to the Super Bowl out of this ugly NFC right now. And if they can do that, all it takes is one game. Once you're there, it just takes one game. The Bengals made it last year. These Vikings, in my opinion, can certainly make it out of this NFC. So I think that they're contenders to an extent. They're not favorites, but they're contenders. And even though I'm a Packers fan, unfortunately, it is an offense that I'm somewhat excited to watch over the next several months. So we'll see how it goes. Thank you all for watching. I will be back next week with another video. Leave suggestions in the comments for what you want to see. And yeah, I'll look at them and I'll figure out what I'm going to do. And I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching.